The following are the processing steps for a whole induced sputum sample for generating fluid phase samples for proteomic assessment and exploratory biomarker analysis. Transfer the sputum sample into a petri dish and record the macroscopic characteristics of the sample. The entire sputum material is put into a pre-weighed conical test tube. Weigh the sputum material and record the weight in grams on the sputum worksheet. Calculate the volume of DPBS at 1x concentration that should be added to the conical tube. It should be 8 times the weight in grams of the material. For example, a 2-gram sputum sample would require 16 mils of DPBS. Add the calculated volume of ice-cold DPBS to the 50 ml tube of the sample. Vortex the conical tube very gently at low speed for approximately 15 seconds to ensure adequate mixing, or pipette aspirate 10 to 15 times. Place the conical tube onto a rotating tumbler or bench rocker for 15 minutes. After mixing for 15 minutes, centrifuge the conical tube at 790 G for 10 minutes in a refrigerated centrifuge. After centrifugation, a 3-phase separation will likely be visible. A loose cell pellet at the bottom, a less clear, possibly cloudy middle fluid phase, and a frothy mucus layer on top. In some cases, only a 2-phase separation will be visible with a tight cell pellet on the bottom and a clear supernatant phase on top. If a 3-phase separation is observed, remove half the volume of the middle layer using a pipette into a new labeled conical tube. Centrifuge the new conical tube at 1500 G for 10 minutes at 4 degrees Celsius and distribute the supernatant equally into 4 2 ml labeled cryovials. Immediately store the labeled DPBS supernatant cryovials at -80 degrees Celsius until shipment. For the DTT or sputolysin preparation, add 0.2% DTT to the sample and mix it gently with a pipette. You can aspirate 10 to 15 times. Incubate the sample on a rotating tumbler for 15 minutes exactly. If a rotating tumbler is not available, use a bench rocker. Following the 15 minutes of incubation, add 1x DPBS to the sample at a volume of 4 times the weight of the plug, and then incubate on a rotating tumbler for exactly 5 minutes. During the 5-minute incubation, prepare the filtration setup. Cut a section of nylon mesh filter sized 48 to 52 microns that will fit over the diameter of a plastic funnel. The plastic funnel will sit in the opening of a new pre-weighed 50 ml test tube. Pre-wet the filter with ice-cold DPBS prior to positioning it inside the funnel. Position the filter such that it has a flat bottom area on which to deliver the sample. After a 5-minute sample incubation, pipette the sample onto the flat floor of the pre-wetted filter in a repeated, drip-wise fashion and collect the sample filtrate into the new pre-weighed 50 ml test tube. If the first filter becomes saturated and the sample is no longer dripping through the filter, use a new pre-wetted filter into the same test tube and continue the filtration process until the entire sample has been filtered. Centrifuge the sample at 790 G for 10 minutes at 4 degrees Celsius. Recover the supernatant with a pipette and distribute equally into 4 2 ml labeled cryovials. Immediately store the labeled DTT supernatant at -80 degrees Celsius until shipment. The remaining cells must be centrifuged at 490 G at 4 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes. Remove and discard the supernatant and resuspend the cell pellet in 1 ml of RNA-later reagent. Immediately store the sample in a -80 degree freezer until shipment. This concludes the processing instructions for whole induced sputum samples.